Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone.
So welcome to the Unitarian Church. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. I'm pleased to welcome you today. That hymn you just heard, Wait and See, Wait and See, I've heard more Unitarian Universalist churches use that during the pandemic than any other hymn. So thanks, Marie, for making that happen. If you're a visitor, we're glad that you are here. You can find out more about the church from going to the website. There's an email that goes out twice a week that gets you all of the ways to get connected to the church. I recommend go on the website and find a way to get that email. That's your key. So there's a few things you should know. First of all, in that email, you can find, if you want to watch this service with other people watching it, we're hosting a Zoom watch party. You can go log on right now and watch it. Also, at the end of this service, there will be a congregational meeting to vote on your next senior minister. Don't know how to do this tactfully. I am the candidate. So that meeting will happen. It happens on Zoom. You have to go to the website to find out more about it. Also, there's two things going on this upcoming week. First of all, we are going to have a not together, but together Thanksgiving dinner for anyone who wants to. So remember, please, please, please try to be safe with people and not spread this whole stupid disease everywhere. And if you want it, 4 o'clock on Thanksgiving Day, we'll have a Zoom room open. Bring your favorite or least favorite dish. Hold it up on the screen and talk with a lot of your Unitarian Universalist friends. And on the following Sunday, we're going to have a drive-through Christmas tree decorating party where you can drop off ornaments you want to decorate. We'll have some things that you could pick up. And we were going to have you come and actually film the pageant during the drive-through, but the numbers are too high. So if you want to be in the Christmas Eve pageant, we're going to do it impromptu, but we're going to film it. Contact me or contact the church. You can email office@unitarianchurchbr.com and let us know that you want to volunteer to be in the pageant, and I will get you directions on how to do it. Glad that you're with us. If you like this service today, in the moment, not like in an hour or two, there's a button right on YouTube. You can click share, and then other people get to see what you're watching. So go ahead and do that. Glad you're with us. Now there's a video of me talking, but from a different setting. Welcome to worship at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. I want to start this whole service off by thanking the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Reverend Arneson is a Unitarian Universalist minister. He was raised UU. He wrote that benediction, Take Courage, Friends. When I knew I wanted to use that as the theme of the service, on a whim, I reached out to him, and I asked him if he'd be willing to record it, and he said, he was a lot more agreeable than I would expect someone who wrote something. This pandemic world, he had to record himself, took, 15 minutes? So as much as I hate the pandemic, there's some good stuff that comes out of it. Throughout my ministry, I've turned to that reading over and over. You see, I have a rule that I never script out my benedictions. I like to see how I'm feeling in the moment of the service. I want to decide right then what you're looking for to hear. And when things feel uncertain, after some election, or after that awful summer, or after most any time this year, after a major death in the congregation, when I'm standing in the back of that sanctuary, or now when I'm standing in an empty sanctuary, I will grab my hymnal, turn to number 698, even though I know it by heart, and share it with you. So today for candidating week, this is the end of it, I thought I would do things just a little differently. So some backstory. For every minister to be what the UUA calls fellowshipped, they must first interview before the Ministerial Fellowshipping Committee in Boston. They actually make you preach on using the pulpit that William Ellery Channing, the founder of the American Unitarian Association, used, which if you don't know going in that you're going to have to do it, it's really scary. But anyway, I had my interview in September of 2011. The chair of the committee that time was Reverend Arneson. Towards the end of the interview, when it was more sort of casual conversation, probably to get the candidates to relax a little and kind of converse with them so they could get to know you a little better, he asked me how I use readings in sermons. I told him that I normally pick a reading that supports the larger theme of what I want to communicate. For the most part, that's what I've done with you. So I know it's a little backwards, but I know I want to preach a message, and then I go digging around finding readings that support that message. I think a lot of ministers do that. That's kind of a trade secret. Don't tell anyone. Anyway, Reverend Arneson, almost talking to me like a colleague, asked if I ever took a reading and let the reading dictate where the service went. I haven't, except today. Today, we're going to do that together. I'm going to take the Take Courage Friends benediction, and we'll go through it line by line. You see, I've been trying to figure out how to structure a candidating week sermon. For those of you who don't know, your visitors or just not been sort of paying attention, when a candidate is named to be your next minister, in this case, a senior minister, that person preaches a sermon on a Sunday, meets with all the groups in the church that they can, preaches another sermon the next Sunday, and then they actually vote on whether that candidate will be your next minister. So what to preach on those two bookend Sundays is a big deal. I was in another church when a minister preached his candidating sermons, and I remember every word. Not every word, but I remember the themes that he picked. I paid attention to that. So I've been thinking about this sermon for a long time. So first of all, I want you to feel good about this congregation. I want to be honest with you about how I want whatever ministry is best for this church without it seeming like I'm trying to entice your vote or not, which in and of itself is a complicated feat to take. Because the congregation you have helped create, the congregation that we co-created together over the last 8 years, is larger than any of us. It serves a purpose greater than any of us. So in trying to figure out what message to share with you today, I decided to just let Reverend Arneson's benediction speak for us. So I will spend the service expounding on it. And so the very first, take courage, friends. There is so much that you do in life that is frightening. Having new little kids, I've gotten a fresh perspective on how many simple things, cars, electrical outlets, open cups of water, are actually really scary. Not to get too distracted, but I will, so stick with me. One of my favorite things about the Harry Potter series is how scary the world is and how not protected from it the kids are. So
confession, I've never read the book, so this is only based on the movie. But there's this one scene where these, I guess they're ogres or something, get into the Hogwarts, I guess, and they're running around the halls bashing things. And the adult's response is something like, I don't know, just wait in this room, it's going to be fine. And then Harry Potter goes out and confronts them or something. Most kids' books and kids' media that I've seen have a level of protection that is not accurate to the risk kids face every single day. And it was really refreshing to see not how clueless adults are, but how much more scattershot the world is than we like to pretend. Childhood is full of dangers and pitfalls. Right now, my son is very, very curious about death. Who dies? Why? How? What happens? I can't protect him from it. It's something all of us have to cope with. So all of this is to say that the act of simply living takes courage. And the act of agreeing to live in community, where you intentionally surround yourself with other people, people who will hurt you, will break your heart, will get sick, and will sometimes die, all of this takes courage. And that's part of what we're exploring today. So take courage, friends.
The ritual that we do when we place stones, it comes actually out of this congregation and this city and this country and Japan's response after a young man was killed, Yoshi Hattori. Today is his 45th, would have been his 45th, it is his 45th birthday. He was killed in 1992 just outside of Baton Rouge. So the stones ritual comes from the 2 large peace stones we have that were donated to the city of Baton Rouge to act as a memorial for everyone who died in violence. So I think just today we need to name that. We are thinking of Don Hoppy, who is recovering from surgery. And right now I'll invite anyone who wishes to pretend you are coming forward and placing a stone in the Chalice bowl. I'll do it for you. But put a stone in the YouTube chat of whatever is on your heart, your mind, you want to let go of or hold on to today. I invite you to come forward virtually now as we place stones. Would you join me in the words for chalice lighting? With hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love. It was not easy to get where we are today. This church was founded in the 1950s to be an intentionally integrated community. And while we are still predominantly white, the decision to prioritize integration is a big deal and worth being celebrated. It meant that this church was kicked out of many of its original homes. It meant that members faced harassment. It meant having local white men wandering the parking lot, writing down license plates in an attempt to intimidate. It's meant having protesters out front of the church just because this congregation, dares to say women are people and deserve agency over their bodies.
It means receiving aggressive and questionable phone calls and emails based on signage we have outside that dare to say black people deserve dignity in life. Now, I'm never one who thinks there's a lot of currency to be gained from large gatherings of people who are largely protected from the worst of what this country can do to people on the margins. So let me not compare talking about the way being hard. Compare this to talking about the ways that are hard for people who are really on the precarious edge. And yet there are still risks in starting this church, in daring to be the religion that says we prioritize love and justice over the status quo and tradition. That statement right there is radically dangerous. So I saw this service, this part of the service, as an exploration of the history of this church. I'd like to contrast that with some of my own history a little later. Part of this church's history, it's important, but over and over, this church has been asked whether to plan for who is here or to build for those who have yet to find this place. When asked after the building was demolished as a part of an eminent domain settlement downtown to build 110, the congregation had a choice. They could build another building roughly the same size as their membership, or they could buy a plot of land way out on the edge of town. So when they bought it, it was beyond the airport, which used to be where the library is now, but beyond the airport, way out in the outskirts of town. It's only that town found us. But do you buy a building that fits the people currently in it, or do you buy a plot of land with no real, they had a plan, but with no real promise of a guarantee of funding to build a church large enough for the people? They chose the harder option because it is what was best for the long-term growth of this church. They actually did something cool. You can look in the archives if we ever get back in the building. We will, but when we do. They wrote a letter to every Unitarian church in the country asking them for $10, which with inflation is about $100 now. And we got about $1,000 back from UU congregations all over the country. Some of them were really angry with us. One person wrote a letter to the president of the association complaining about us. One wrote us a threatening letter saying, we would send you $10, but are you integrated? And so we sent them a check for $10 and said, we're integrated. Are you? We never heard back. Anyway, when the church voted to build its current sanctuary, and I've heard a number of people describe it this way, it dwarfed the gathered congregation. And if you've ever been in that sanctuary for a small service, like maybe a small wedding or a funeral, it's a very echoey, cavernous space, and it can feel very empty. But that congregation in the 80s prioritized the long-term health and growth of the institution over their immediate worshiping comfort. The history is full of these kind of choices to do what is best for the people they have yet to meet. It's a great church you're in. It's a great church to be a part of.
A prayer for the dedication of the Unitarian Fellowship House at Baton Rouge, Reverend Anita Pickett, March the 3rd, 1957. We who are gathered within these walls dedicate this house to the best we know in our world and in ourselves. We reach out to all other seekers after truth and freedom. In this high moment, standing between two eternities, we remember that we are the heirs to the ages. All the past is part of us. All the future is germinating in this moment. We pledge to our children and to all children our loyalty to truth and growth. May every friendship here engendered lead to greater love and joy in human lives. May every argument advanced lead through orderly discussion to deeper understanding. May all the wealth we invest in this enterprise and in every service rendered be given with a willing heart. In this spirit, we dedicate this house to the service of love and truth.
But let's sing.
This will be the third time I've filmed in front of my Satsuma tree. I remember in March walking past this tree right when the lockdown started. Right when it started, I committed to call every member of this church to check in, or at least every member who would answer the phone. That process took a solid 4 months. I had to do it with a baby and a toddler at home. I remember talking to some in the church who worked in the medical field. A woman in church I talked to who worked in the medical field. I asked her how long she was preparing for this to take. At the time, I was expecting her to say a few weeks, or at most a month, which at the time seemed untenable. When she said she wouldn't be shocked if this lasted until June, I couldn't imagine that. As I called you one at a time, or those of you who answered at least, the conversations shifted over the months. Maybe there's something about A's and B's that are different from S's and T's. I don't know, or maybe it's the time. But over the months, the conversations shifted to first just logistics. How do you get groceries? How are you making it through? Can you get the emails? To more lonely, people wanted to talk a whole lot longer. To more depressed, to afraid, to resigned. And I paced right here on this path over and over until my grass got completely worn down from the conversations. I'd pass this tree every day. I watched blooms show up, and then flowers, and then the flowers fall off, and then the satsumas start to grow. This happened while some of you got sick. Some members of the church died. Many of you had loved ones who died. All while this tree kept trying to bear fruit. And I know I'm supposed to tie this together with one of those notice how the lilies of the field don't worry things. Something about how the natural order of things and how even though we're suffering, the world moves on, and so why should we worry too? But I'm not feeling that comparison. And this is tricky because many Unitarian Universalists love nature, and we love flowers and fruit, just like we love talking about the easy forms of justice and how we love befriending those people who society has cast aside. But we usually avoid the fact that the people who might most need our love are the people we've cast aside. And that the forms of justice that are the hardest for us to admit to are probably the ones we benefit the most from. And while this fruit is of nature, this virus is also of nature. And those 5 hurricanes, a nature of something that our behaviors, as well as the amount we overlook industry's complicity, has made those storms stronger. Instead, I merely see this tree as a promise that we will get through this. And I know that right now the path may seem less clear than ever. It's strange for me to say that on a day when you are literally about to vote in the direction of this church, which is not something this church does very often. You've only ever called 4 ministers. Today is a rare and special day in the life of the church. No matter the direction of the vote, you will know a direction. But the path seems less clear right now because of the spiking numbers. We at least know there seems to be hope on the horizon with the vaccine, but we don't exactly know when that hope will get here. And so we still wait. Actually, this would be a great Advent theme about waiting. It's just a little early. And maybe that's why I keep being drawn to this fruit. It's the promise that we will get through this, and we will love life so much more when we can get there. But if you don't mind me stretching the metaphor too much, maybe it's a reminder that even when things feel terrible or frightening or the path is never clear, we've still got reasons for hope and joy. Even the darkest night has stars, and it has a larger universe.
May I be filled with loving kindness.
would you join me in a moment of prayer and reflection? That great mystery that we know, that some call God, the God that we know when we see love and kindness and forgiveness and justice, be with us on this day. Be with all those members who are here in person and those who are far away. Be with all those who are afraid with this disease. Those who have lost someone or lost a sense of safety or a sense of purpose or distance or clarity. Hold all those who are going through transitions right now. May they know they are loved and that they are held in care. We pray for all those who are mourning the death of a child or a spouse or a friend or a sibling or a parent or a loved one. We hold all those who wish to be united with their families again. We hold those this country separated from their parents in hope that they will be returned safely. And we pray that we can make it through this week and this month and this year and make the world better because we are going through it together. May you be at peace. May you know love. Amen.
There's a part of the story that I don't mention very often, and it connects with this church in an interesting way. So I was raised Unitarian Universalist in Slidell. The small congregation had a handful of kids, but most of them lived in Covington or Mandeville. And if you've never been to the North Shore, it's a significant distance between them. I loved my church. I felt safe there. I had fun there. People respected me there. But because I was the only Unitarian Universalist in my school, I had a hard time knowing that my religion was real. Any person raised you will likely be able to tell stories of their friends and other kids and teachers and other adults commenting on how their religion isn't real or it's a cult or it's destining us for hell. A theological claim that is the most dubious, by the way, since Universalism's basic premise is that an all-loving God could not banish people to hell and that the very existence of hell would invalidate the greatness of God. But when I was a kid, at a particular time in Unitarian Universalism, and the church that I was raised in was wholly dedicated to avoiding all of the linguistic trappings of the religions most of its members left. But it meant that for me, I didn't have the theological grounding. Not so much to argue with the kids at my school about hell and if my religion was right or not, but to know deep down in my soul that my religion was right, safe, and that the threats of hell were more reflections of damaging and hurtful theologies and not a reflection on the church I was raised in at all. So look, it's been a lot of work for me to love the city I'm from, especially all of the tendencies to prioritize status quo and idolatry of the past and fear and undermining of the promised land, to prioritize those over love, compassion, and justice. It's taken me close to 40 years to realize that my city and the cultures that I come from are part of a larger system that forced many of the people I grew up around, that I tried so hard to distance myself, forced them to embrace cultural values that I found dangerous and harmful. But all of this is to say that there's a part of my story that I don't like to talk about very often, mostly because of my age. I heard my call to the ministry as an active youth in our district. I didn't talk about it much because in my 30s, it was a little too close to being too young, but it's an important part of the story, and so I have to tell you. Every month or two, a handful of the youth at the New Orleans church, I had to commute to New Orleans to have any other youth my own age around. We would drive a minimum of 8 hours to Houston and all the way up to 14 or 16 hours to Tulsa. We'd make these long drives for these weekend events we called rallies. These were kind of weekend youth conferences, and what I experienced there was the most pure form of universalism manifested. I had never been and still have never been surrounded by a group of people And bear in mind, this wasn't about the individuals, because Unitarian Universalists from all over the country, all over the continent probably, who were lucky enough to have found a home at rallies and cons, which is what they call them in most of the country, can attest to this, that there was something larger about the culture created. But in contrast to my experience of the day-to-day life, where I was expected to buy into dysfunction and to not question the dangerous and oppressive elements of the status quo, here, the gathered congregation, so to speak, seemed to only have one thing that they wanted from me. They simply wanted me to be the best that I could be. The amount of love and support entirely steered towards encouraging me to just trust that I am good enough and worthy. And that still fuels me today. I heard my call in this petri dish of beloved community. I was so grateful for this gift that I was willing to spend my life paying it back for future generations. And this culture was only created because congregations were willing to hire directors of religious education and youth directors, and to cultivate youth groups, and to help pay for vans that would, and they would loan their church buildings for us to gather. All of this so that the congregational leaders would never meet or know about, would find some sanctuary from the turbulence and fright of adolescence. This congregation and others all throughout Arkansas and Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana gave me the gift of a sustained life that gave me this ministry. And this is just one example of the stakes being very high. I know that others of you have found love and compassion and justice and acceptance and celebration of you being just who you are in this church. I know some of you found comfort here. All of this is here because other people, some we know and some we'll never know, gave of their money, of their time, of their hearts, of their trust to make this happen.
So I have three things for the offering. When I scripted out the service, I had two. But the first is, I saw what y'all did on the YouTube chat, and I haven't noticed it before, but the asterisk for stones is brilliant. So keep doing that. So give because this is a creative, fun church. Second is, I have hot off the presses the newest pledge numbers. We still have 246 pledges out. 79 of you have increased more than $51,000, so we're well on our way. If the other 246 of you could turn in your pledge card and increase it, we could come out of this pandemic better than any one of us could have ever expected. And the third part is, we budget every year for about $18,000 to come from the plate collections, and we're not even at $3,000. I think it's because every week we only have the option of doing it virtually. So I'll ask you to consider giving virtually, and we're going to start doing shared plate offerings because we also have to give a lot to the organizations that we made a promise to share a plate with them. So, but that's coming up in the next few weeks. So I'll ask you to give very generously this morning, to turn in your pledge, and to give for the ongoing work of this church. You can find out more at unitarianbr.org/give. I'll invite you to give now as this morning's offering is given and received.
I didn't want this next part to be here. I had a vision for the next 2 months. The numbers would stay low. We'd start doing outdoor worship. We'd continue to kind of skirt along while the places where it was too uncomfortable to be outside, the numbers would increase, but we would make it through. But the current pandemic doesn't seem to want to allow that. Doesn't look like we're going to be able to meet outdoors for worship anytime soon. We will, but not yet. So right now we need to take courage. We've got to make it through Thanksgiving and Christmas and Mardi Gras. We can do it. I want us to be a church that, even though it's lonely, even though some of you may be afraid, some of you are sick of living in fear, sick of letting this stupid pandemic dictate our lives, we're not done with it yet. I know that public health officials have asked us not to gather for Thanksgiving, but let's go further. Let's be the church where your family members don't have to worry about being asked to choose between two impossible decisions. I want to hear from an adult family member who lives in Texas or Michigan or California. I want to hear them say, I didn't have to choose between my family's health and the public health and being asked to come visit my family for Thanksgiving, because we were members of the Unitarian Church. And in this church, we always put the greater good over our own needs. I'm done with this pandemic. I bet you are too. We have to take courage. We can get through this together.
Torn and confused, lonely and enraged, I greet the new day with suspicion. Spirit of life, show me the gate to healing. May I find in my hands the tools to craft a way through the pain. When even those tools fail me, may other hands reach out. Let me welcome them and know them as your hands, gently holding me, keeping me from collapse, shaping me and molding me new strength until I am ready to try again.
Over and over, I've come back to this benediction because it feels more theologically authentic than anything that I've read in the hymnal. I can't fix what is wrong with me or what is wrong with you sometimes. I can't fix addiction. I can't fix depression. I can't prevent assaults and poverty and violence and systemic oppression. And yet we must be the church who tries. We must be the church who shows up for each other. We must be the church that shows up for the world. We must be the church who says that loudly and proudly that who you are, is amazing and divine and beautiful. We must be the church who overturns tables at any institution that puts tradition and status quo ahead of justice and radical inclusion. And yet, even with all of that, there are still things we cannot fix. And because of that, we have to make a sacred promise that no matter what, you will not go through this life alone.
Take courage, friends.
The way is often hard.
The path is never clear.
And the stakes are very high.
Take courage.
For deep down,
There is another truth.
You are not alone.
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known, with a pledge to one another that we journey not alone. Joy and sorrow make us wise, into all that lives and dies. Love calls us on. Love calls us on. Words and deeds of those before us, waken here to keep us strong. Bend our voices in the chorus of creation's living song. Courage bids us lift our eyes upwards to the shining skies. Hope calls us on. Hope calls us on. Calls us on.
Take courage, friends.
Take courage, friends.
Take courage, friends.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
you are not alone.
Loyal guides in love and duty, lead us with a trusted light. Blessed are they whose inward beauty shows the path of truth.
So you've made it through one of the 4 holidays we have to make it through. We still have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Mardi Gras. So take this benediction for this week so that we can make it through Thanksgiving together. You might recognize it. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard and the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in peace, go in love. Amen.